welcome back. And we are moving into our final conversation for today. It's a very important one we don't like talking about, but we're going to talk about it anyway. And that is budgeting. We have with us once again financial advisor Corine Fuller to tell us about putting together our budget for, wait for it, Christmas. Good morning.
Good morning. It's good to be here.
We're so happy to have you back.
Yes, it's always good to be here to talk about this very important topic. Yeah.
And
in August, we're talking about Christmas, I understand.
Ooh, well, I know every time you come, you say, well, the planning for Christmas spending happens long before Christmas.
Yes.
And so that's what we're addressing
Yes,
today, that it is one full basket till Christmas get here, right?
Exactly.
Now,
What I think is important, though, even though you're thinking about making plans for Christmas, even from now, is to think about an overall plan for, for your finances. That's very important, because you don't want to focus on Christmas and then there are some important things that you haven't put in place as yet. So I'm afraid, guys, that we say pretty much we say the same thing, or the same thing. It doesn't really change, does it?
Yeah.
Putting in a plan in place so that you are prepared for these things that you know about, and also for the things that you're not so sure about.
What's tricky about planning ahead, particularly for Christmas, if you look at a quarterly financial plan, for instance, you know that we're going into the end of the year now, because from September to December isn't such a long space of time in terms of getting your monies together to prepare for Christmas.
Yes.
But at the same time, there is an overlap in a sense because of the September celebrations. It's also a time of, well, not only the September celebrations, let me correct myself, the fact that the academic year also begins in September.
Yes.
So you have all these expenses that you're also facing, and yet one would want to be able to set aside a few dollars here and there in anticipation of the expense in December.
Yes. And there are some things that you could do, really. Again, the overall plan is very important, because if you have children going to school, you know what it's going to be like, in August and in September when you get them back to school. If you're going to celebrate for the 10th, you know that this is something that we do every year, right? And Christmas comes every year as well. So it is a matter of planning, really from the beginning of the year, about what you know is going to happen, and you could, you plan for those things. And you do know that things happen that you don't expect as well. There was Harvey, there was Franklin, things like that. People get sick, there's an accident, something happens to your car, things like that. So you really can't get away from planning.
And, it's interesting. We were chatting during the break, and I think, people also call this, we know Maga season to be January, after you've drained your expenses against your advice for Christmas. And there's also a very tight financial crunch around this time.
Because of the many activities.
There are many activities, and parents oftentimes are faced with tuition and fees and books and uniforms and the full scope of what it takes to go back to school. In fact, there's a proliferation of back to school loans and access to credit available at this time as well. How do we advise people to approach meeting the expenses? And there is a significant entertainment budget lined up for this month as well. But not be so destitute after the month is over.
Okay, planning.
Let's start there.
Let's start
planning.
There, right. So in everything, not only for Christmas. If you have an idea of what you want to spend, it gives you it gives you a little time to figure out how to put the money together. So let's just use Christmas as an example. If you'll have to figure out how much I want to spend at Christmas. And if you could do that, you're one step ahead, because you don't want to be caught in a situation where you want to spend, you don't have the money, and so you do desperate things. Or you have no clue how much you want to spend and you end up overspending, right? So if you use your past experiences and figure that, I want $500, say, to be able to spend for Christmas. You could look to see how you could put aside that money. And sacrifice is the word. What will you sacrifice to put aside that money to over the next 4 or 5 months? So if it's 5 months away from Christmas, and you want to have an additional $500, you figure out how you could save $100 a month, you know, so you could have that amount when the time comes.
Yeah.
And there are several other things that you could do too. Some people, they put away their change, you know, from the year begin, they put away their change, and that is what we'll spend for Christmas. Whatever that comes up to, that is what it's going to be, you know. So some people do that. There are some other things too that you could do, like if you have another source of income, you could decide, you know, if I do hair braiding, say, if I do nails, you know, things on the side.
Yeah.
If I do tutoring, if I make cakes, whatever, you could decide, well, for the next 3 months, I'm going to put aside some of this money specifically, you know, for Christmas or for whatever expense you have coming up. Some people use the syndicate. You know, they use the syndicate, and that's what they use, you know, to meet a particular expense. And then, of course, when Christmas comes along, you could make a choice as to, do I really need another curtain? You know?
I agree.
See, those are the difficult decisions that one finds herself having to make, right?
Yes.
Because
but hold on, is it difficult if you have 2 or 3 nice curtains
From the
already
last
from the
couple
last
years?
year?
it is difficult. It is difficult. Look, I'll tell you this,
It's
right?
cultural.
As part of a household, a small family at that, there are certain decisions that I have to face in terms of changing out new stuff at the end of the year. Not necessarily things that I would say I want to change, but I have to go with the flow in a sense. As so
You can't fight that.
so if I'm told, okay, new curtains or new chair covering or new quilts or what have you, then I just prepare myself that I need to find the money, set it aside, and then that's what we need to do.
Well, you know, if that is important to keep the peace, right? And they say happy wife, happy life,
right?
But this is where, you know, a good discussion would come in, because if you say, for example, you don't have a emergency fund, you know, you don't have any money set aside that if anything happens to you or your child or your wife, you really don't have that money. You'll have to be scrambling around to get that money. That is an important decision, I think, or it's an important fund to have. So then the discussion could start. You know, if we don't change out the chair, the sofa and so on this year, then we could probably put some monies aside for an emergency, you know. If you want to go on a nice vacation, you know, if we don't purchase the curtains or, you know, things like that, we could start putting aside some money for this vacation that we want to go on. So knowing what you want to accomplish, you know, discussing and including the family would probably help you a bit.
I find that's important. Setting goals for what you want, whether it's, you know, a vacation, which is very much so, or not having to take out a loan for your Easter trip or back to school or summer trip that you can save towards it. But let's talk about for this, you know, people who have budgeting as a practice, this is a no-brainer for them. You know, they're starting to put aside already. They probably already have it. Maybe they've been putting aside over time for quite some time. But for people who really are just jumping in after years of trying to keep up, what's a great way to start? What are some practical tips to start to put aside money, whether for emergency or for what you know you'll spend at Christmas time, so you don't have the real hard time afterwards? Christmas?
There are several things that you can do, right? We spoke about 2.
You said the small change.
You could put aside your small change.
I once had an experience where I put aside the $2 bill. Any $2 bill that I got, I didn't spend. I just didn't spend it. I used coins, I used whatever. And you'd be surprised to know how much you end up saving just within that time, with a conscious decision not to spend the $2 bill. But that's just one. I haven't continued it. It worked for a while.
It worked for a while.
So what happens when you go to the grocery store and then instead of them giving you a hard $10 bill, you get 5 2s?
I don't spend it.
That requires a discipline.
Put it aside, but don't spend, because it's saving. But it's like it's easier to remember every time I see the purple bill that I won't spend it. I know people who do it at 5. That's way too much. But the 2 is easier.
it boils down to what you want, and it does take discipline. There's no getting around that. But if you have in your mind, if you focus on what you really want to accomplish, what is important to you, it becomes a little easier. So we're not saying that it is easy. It takes discipline, it takes sacrifice, and you could do it. So we talked about your hobbies, you know, things that you earn income from. That's a practical way. We have so many skilled and talented people, you know, and that make monies from their talent. So that is something that they could focus on. I always say that when you are able to, you work, you earn income, because there will come a time when you won't want to work. Yeah. And sometimes, you know, that you can't work. Yeah. So whenever you have the opportunity, make an income. You know, you don't let it overcome everything that you do, but keep focused on what you want to achieve.
One of the difficulties for some people when it comes to budgeting is the fact that because of our present economic situations, it's so difficult to come up with a financial plan when you're living hand to mouth, essentially. That
is true,
and that's arguably one of the toughest things to do when you're living hand to mouth, and you have to come up with a short-term, mid-term, and long-term financial plan.
And that's a reality for many people. And it's different, you know, it's different for different people. So you will have to figure out what sacrifice you can make, because sometimes you live hand to mouth, but then you realize, I'm spending a lot of money on, say, communication, or I'm spending a lot of money on food, you know. So it's really to take an assessment of your situation and see where you can make the changes that will make a difference for you. Because you might think, oh, you know, this week it's only $5 I'll save, but $5 every week comes up to quite a bit. You know, that could be the start for your emergency fund, you know.
And I think one of the things, you've spoken about it before, and I think from the first time you told me, it's just stuck with me. The cost of, or how much you spend on purchasing breakfast or lunch every single day. If you spend $3 5 times a week, every single work day, it's almost $100 you're spending from your money just on breakfast.
Yes. And we know sometimes it doesn't stop at breakfast.
You
know, they do lunch.
Lunch is even more expensive.
Even more, right? So you could decide. Another practical thing is, you know, I've been buying lunch every day. Okay, I'll bring lunch from home 2 days for the week. Maybe it's hard to, you know, to stop cold. So maybe 2 days for the week, and you and actually see the savings that you have and put it aside. Put it aside in a separate account. If you you know, you could do that so that you could see it growing. And you could go from there. So making those types of sacrifices would help to put aside some money.
What I notice is that for some of us, once we get into a certain trend or a cycle, it's difficult to break. I'd say that because I noticed that, well, to an extent myself included now, you find that people wake up in the morning and they sort of, what we call lollygag in terms of getting ready for work, so that they end up having to catch a cab to go to work. And then when you look at the expense at the end of the week or every 2 weeks, if you were to get up earlier and be productive in terms of getting ready for work, you could leave out early enough to walk. It's good for your health. And plus you're saving money. But we don't look at things like
the connection. And even if you drive, sometimes, like, you know, during the summer coming from Ladyville, it is easy driving because there's not a lot of traffic on the road. But when school reopens, you'll have to make the decision whether you leave early so that you don't spend so much gas, you know,
waiting in line.
taking an hour to get to town instead of 20 minutes. So those are some of the decisions that you can make to assist you, you know, to save some money. And it is very important, because I always say that the responsibility, your financial independence is really your responsibility, you know, and it really takes, you have to stop and think and see what you want to accomplish and make some moves to get those important things done, you know.
You know, and it's so important for us to be able to have these conversations, because we never learn it. You know, I say it all the time. I would have much more preferred to have focused on budgeting and understanding interest and all these other things in school rather than, you know, whether it's ratios or algebra. They're still useful skills every now and again, but people don't learn how to manage money. Financial literacy is so important.
It's
and I
very
know
important.
in your work with the Credit Union League, and obviously as a financial advisor, you encounter people all the time. And I think they say exactly what Isani says. I know you think I can save, but trust me, nothing is left at the end of the month. Nothing is left at the end of the 2-week period. I starve for one day before the salary is deposited. Where do you start with people like that?
You look on what they do on a day-to-day basis with their money. And it will for some people it will take a longer time for them to reach a spot where they can, you know, start to see a change, because you might have people who are so indebted that there is absolutely no money left over. So you have to look to see when a certain debt will be fully paid up, and assist them to see when this money frees up. You will have no other choice but to put something aside, you know, and not to get indebted again, because that is a trap that a lot of people are caught in, that it's very difficult to get out, you know.
And that was going to be my next question. I think that's so important. You know, there are a lot of people in this country who choose every time they get paid who they'll pay, you know. They perhaps owe the lending institutions, maybe they're behind with some of their bills. You know, cable is coming and asking for payments, or
rent.
You know, BTL already disconnect you. But they're literally pick and choosing what needs to be paid at any given time.
They need to stop borrowing. Really stop borrowing, and understand that hardship will come, but you have to go through this before you come to the, you know, the light at the end of the tunnel. And then there are certain expenses and debt that you shouldn't ignore. So you don't want to lose your house. So you're going to pay your mortgage, you're going to pay your rent. You could do without a phone, believe it or not. You remember? When you didn't you know, you can do without a phone. You can do without internet at your home, you know.
You can even do without cable now.
You could do without cable, you know. So again, you look on your situation and see where you want to go, and then you have to make the hard decisions about getting there. And for the most part, it will be hard, you know, but it didn't take overnight for you to get in this situation. So it will take a little working hard to come out of it. But at the end of the day, it's sacrifice, you know, understanding where you want to go and be willing to sacrifice to get there.
Do you attempt to take out maybe a high interest loan to pay off some of these?
Some people like the idea of consolidating all their loans, right, so that you make one payment, but that doesn't help you if it allows you a little cash flow and then you become indebted again. You know, the long-term way is to try to instill some discipline in yourself so that you don't get caught up with it again. There's nothing wrong in borrowing. You know, borrowing helps you to get where you want to go. If you want to build a house, most people would borrow. You know, if you want an education, some people might have to borrow, but you can't be borrowing for things that are quickly consumed. You know, you consume it in a month and you pay for it over 2-3 years. That makes no sense.
Like maxing out your credit card.
Things like that.
On a trip.
and just paying the minimum, you know, you pay this high interest and so on. So it's a lot of things to think about and to really put in place so that you don't get in a situation where it's hard to come out of, because it's painful. It's painful.
No, and I wanted to say that because I know that a lot of people are facing a situation like that. Do you still save when you're heavily indebted?
Well, sometimes you cannot. Sometimes you have to organize yourself so that you get in a situation where you can save. You know, sometimes the reality is that you need to pay off these debts so that you could release yourself again and be in a position where you can save. And you know, next time we'll come and talk about how saving is important, but nowadays investing is even more important. You know,
we should with these interest rates.
With these interest
it makes
rates. Yes, exactly.
There is this expression. It's one of those age-old sayings and adage, where in Belize particularly we say, well, you have to owe for own. because being able to acquire the capital on your own is so difficult that it's often easier for you to be able to borrow the money that you need, be it for a business venture, be it for home, or even in education, like as you mentioned. Sometimes we don't have that kind of money readily available for us to send our kids to the school that we would want them to attend, and you have to borrow to send them abroad. Or if you want to build a house and you don't necessarily have the amount of money to build your dream home, per se, you have to go to the bank and say, well, you know what, I want to be able to borrow X amount of money against whatever it is that you have as your collateral. And oftentimes, in terms of being able to secure that lump sum of money, is the easier part. As challenging as that may be for some, it is the easier part of it. The discipline of being able to pay it back is what leaves a lot of people completely indebted and penniless.
You know, the rule of thumb is that you shouldn't have more than 30% of your income that you have to repay in debt, and that is all your debt. Because you have to pay, you have to live, right? So that is a rule of thumb. And sometimes we get so excited about a new house and we overextend ourselves. We bite off more than we could chew. And
not all institutions are responsible enough to tell you that you're overextending yourself.
And sometimes when you sit in front of the loans officer, you don't tell them the truth. Because you want, you know, you want this house, you want this car, you want, and you don't. But if you don't, so that is the thing. If you don't have a plan, then anything goes. You get this big loan to buy this fancy car, but then you forget that down the road, in probably another year or two, you need to go to university and you will need money for that. You know, so you have to really sit down and take stock and see what you want to accomplish, and then you make plans accordingly.
What happens quite often, and you'll forgive me for saying this, right? And our viewers.
Or you hope she'll forgive you, right?
my younger viewers will also have to forgive me for saying this. I was always taught 4 walls before 4 wheels.
Okay.
Right? Simply based on the fact that the value of a house appreciates versus the value of a vehicle, which depreciates the moment you drive it off the lot. And in most cases, we in Belize aren't necessarily buying brand new vehicles off the lot. We're doing the resale thing. What I notice a lot of young people do, either coming out of sixth form, for instance, or having landed their first job, the first thing is, I need to buy a vehicle.
It has to be fancy.
And a fancy
they go and they buy a fancy vehicle. So they're already indebted to the bank or the lending institution for that loan to purchase the vehicle. But they don't necessarily take into consideration all the other expenses that come along with owning a vehicle. You find that they're struggling with the insurance. Hell, they're even struggling with purchasing gas for the vehicle. Let alone if they were to get in a fender bender or something and it's on them. They don't have the kind of money to be able to support owning a vehicle. And I think it's something that a lot of people fall into that trap. It's sort of like wanting to keep up with the Joneses, for instance, because everybody else is doing it and it's the in thing. What advice would you give to young people in that sense?
Well, if they would listen.
Let's start there.
Let's start there. Let's hope they would listen. Well, you know, you would probably talk to them about what they want to accomplish. So a car is nice, yes. But what else do you want to accomplish? You know, this car, as you said, will depreciate. If you don't have other things in place, what will you do with the car? You know, even if you sell it, you're not going to get, for the most part, you're not going to get what you paid for. Anything. So what are the other important things to you? If a car is the only important thing to you, you will not be able to convince them otherwise. But if you could get them to see that there are other important things that they would want. Higher education might be one. Some of them would need to get a house, you know. Some of them want to get married, you know. If you have a car, how will you be able to manage that and a household and probably children, you know? So it is helping them to see the bigger picture,
Yeah.
and see if that would dissuade them from spending so much on a vehicle. And they probably were riding a bicycle before that. You know.
Yeah, no, I think it's a valid point. I think, you know, some people at a very young age are extending themselves for very expensive vehicles that look nice, but really it isn't a worthwhile investment. If you need a vehicle, then it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be a high-end, very expensive. You know.
It has to be functional. It can't cost you very much in maintenance either.
Exactly. So there's a balance. Yes. Yes. You know. And sometimes you do need a vehicle to get to work.
Yes.
You know, you do need a vehicle. It's not like before. I saw. Was it on Facebook? I don't remember, but I saw a picture of old Belize in 1908. It was so beautiful. They had some older looking cars on a horse, I think. You know, so we are not there, right? Yeah. We do need transportation, but you don't have to overdo it when there are other things that you need to do. I always say too that when you're younger, you could take more hardship. When you get a little older, when you've set your foundation, when you're younger, when you're older, when your knees get tired and hurt you, and you could afford a nicer vehicle, do that then, you know?
Yeah. So, all right, I want to go back to some of the ways that we can save, because I think that's getting us a bit on track. We talked about moonlighting or doing little things that you are good at to make extra cash.
Yes.
You talked about putting aside change until it builds up, right? And not using it. Putting it aside and not using it.
Putting it aside and not using it, yes. At Christmas, too, you could think about doing Kris Kindle or Kris Kingle, Kris Kingle, not Kindle, Kris Kingle, KK. Instead of, you know, if you have a large family and you have you know, you feel compelled to buy a gift for everybody, and why not do a Kris Kingle so that everybody is focused on a gift and everybody is happy.
Yes.
Right? You might not be able to include the children, but at least for the adults, that is something that you could do. That would cut down quite a bit.
That's an ideal thing in a perfect world.
I've done it once with my family. I know families that do it. The adults do Kris Kingle and then the kids get gifts from everyone.
I don't want to be a party pooper, but the thing about it is that you never truly get what you want unless you specify
Let me tell you the
what
trick
it is
about
that your KK should get for you.
Is that you buy, you know what, this happened to me last year. Because at work, I was saying, well, suppose you get, you know, you don't know what to buy. They say, well, buy something that you would like. And you know, I picked my name. I picked my name. So buy something that you would like or that you know that the person would like. I know it's kind of, you know, tricky. And what we do sometimes too, we have a list.
Wish list.
Write down what you want. Because the worst thing is to give somebody a gift that they don't really, you've spent, spent a lot of time and effort into getting it, and then they don't really like it. But you could have a wish list. You know,
or some people, I look at it as a matter of being able to receive, in a sense, what you've given, right? Because if I look at, I'll just share a quick example here. I know time is running out. Quick example. When you're in primary school and you play KK, you have a certain budget, but there are certain economic realities that may prevent who you have as your KK from reciprocating in that sense. So you end up buying the nice little toy car and then you get an apple. And then when you go home, it's a problem with your parents because
they spent a lot of
there's
money.
not that kind of parity, so to speak, right? And it's the same thing that I would want to think carries over when you're dealing with adults as well. And hence the reason why we now set a certain price point. You say, okay, if it's $75, it's $75, you can't go below that. But if you have the extra and you want to go all out, then that's fine too.
So rules, you have to set the rules indeed.
You could do budgets, a cap for which actually makes shopping harder. But like I said, I've done the KK with the adults.
With the adults,
the kids, they should have as many gifts as they can get.
As you can afford.
As
many as you can afford.
As many as you can afford. That's right.
So the KK is one. And another thing too that sometimes we miss out on is purchasing quality stuff for Christmas or for anything that can last. Right? So have you ever passed homes and you've seen the lights still on the house, you know, the holly or whatever they call it still on the door, things like that. So, so you know, you could think about purchasing quality things that will last you for a while, so you don't have to purchase this again, you know, next Christmas and so on, right?
That's true.
Another thing that you could do too is give a service as a gift rather than buying something. Maybe
Material.
yes, maybe a service. Maybe somebody would cook your turkey for you. That would be a pleasant gift. You know, they would make the cake for you. You know.
And what about buying stuff early? I mean,
yes.
It might be cheaper
Picking
to get some things now than it will be to get it in December.
Yes.
Or maybe buy a couple of lights this month,
Yes.
next month, and then you're ready for Christmas when it gets closer.
Yes, and picking up things throughout the year too. You know, if you see something nice, you figure, oh, this would be nice for this one. You know, you pick it up at the, you know, at a time rather than leaving it until the end of the time. And that works for everything.
Yeah.
You know, when it's time for school, don't wait until school is reopening next week for you to try and figure out what will happen and to get the children back to school. You know, make your plans early and get things sorted out so that you're not frustrated and it doesn't happen for you or the children.
Yeah.
You know, it's very important. Plan and sacrifice.
Plan and
sacrifice.
sacrifice.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to share with us just about being able to survive the upcoming September celebrations and festivities and also preparing for Christmas?
For Christmas, well, probably thinking about it from before, but you know, if you haven't done that, do a budget. What will you spend that will not allow you to be in a difficult situation further down the road?
Yeah.
You know, make a budget and try to stick to it for these events because they, you know, they can run up and they can be costly, but you have to figure out what can you afford. You mightn't be able to go to every pan that knocks, but choose the one that you want to go to and have it, let it stay within your budget, remembering Christmas is coming up. January is coming up, you know, your regular bills are there, you know, and emergencies happen, you don't know when those will happen. So keeping those realities, you know, in sight would help you to.
And saving for, let's say, Christmas. Let's say I start to put aside money for Christmas. Is it separate from what would be my emergency fund?
I do believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Once again, we will continue to have conversation because we will need to reinforce the concept of budgeting for those who don't have the practice, but most importantly, so we can decrease the level of struggling that we have in meeting our expenses. Thank you so much for stopping in. Right?
My pleasure.
We're going to go ahead and take our final break and back we'll have our wrap up, so stay tuned.